So you're saying there's a chance. Welcome back to the podcast daily. That is Bill Landis. I am Austin Ward. And we promised, what was it? 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, we said we're not going to talk about the college football rankings, college football playoff rankings until it matters. And guess what? Now, unfortunately, they do. Ohio State needs help, but Bill, they are number 6 after Tuesday night's release. And that feels like right where we thought they would be and right in position where they can still cling to a little bit of hope.
Yeah, I don't think it changes really the hope you should have had coming out of last weekend. I think the results that Ohio State needs remain the same. I was a little surprised that they were 6th. I thought Ohio State might be 5th. Oregon ends up 5th, and I'm not entirely sure why. Because like Ohio State loses and now their records are the same. Ohio State's resume is still better than Oregon's. Oregon has played better, I think unquestionably, has played better more consistently than Ohio State has, but Ohio State's schedule and strength of record are better than Oregon's. So I don't know why Ohio State fell behind them. I don't think it matters much. It was just an odd decision to me that they put Oregon ahead of Ohio State. I thought Ohio State was going to be 5th, but they're 6th, and I don't think it matters in terms of their ability to still get into the field if the chaos they need happens.
Well, you have to have some sort of controversy, right? That's the whole point of these weekly television shows, is to spice it up. So like, hey,
yeah,
well, we don't want to, Ohio State just lost, recency bias. You got to drop them behind Oregon. You can't keep them above there. That's this week's justification.
Yeah, or you can do what Greg McElroy did on Tuesday night, which was pull a stat out of his butt, which is wins against teams with 8 wins. Apparently Alabama has more of them than Ohio State does. Congratulations to Nick Saban. I hope he gets a ring for having 3 wins against teams with 8 wins. It's ridiculous. The way that they can twist things to try to make a conversation out of nothing. But there is a worthwhile conversation to have about Ohio State and its path to potentially get in.
Do you think that his former coach told him to drop that stat on national television?
Yeah, probably. I would assume so. All these guys are out there just stumping for the school they played for. If I were in their shoes, I'd probably be doing the same thing. But I would hope that somewhere somebody would be laughing at me all the same.
I feel like Joey Galloway didn't necessarily get that memo for Ohio State, but that stuff doesn't matter. It is all entertainment, and the insanity. I say this every single year, and it's as true now as it ever has been. Like, you can make arguments when 130 teams can't play each other. You're going to be able to come up with some metric that favors one program over another. And you're going to argue over one thing or another. Ohio State had the ability to remove all of that from the equation on Saturday, and they didn't do it. Like, that's the situation. Mm-hmm. Now they know what it is going into this week. Even though they are ahead of Texas and Alabama, you still need to comfortably rule them out. They both get to play. They're number 7, Texas, Alabama number 8. Not a great spot for them to be in. In the penultimate rankings, no team ranked lower than 6 has ever made it into the college football playoff field. If Alabama beats Georgia, they will. I'm not sure. Like, Texas still feels like a pretty long shot to get in, but Ohio State can't feel good about that because they would add a Big 12 championship game. So that has to be factored into what I think, Bill, we agree is a 3-team parlay that the Buckeyes need to get in, which is Georgia officially knocking out Alabama, Oklahoma State knocking out Texas, and then Louisville putting Florida State out of its misery, which it tried to get there last week against Florida and just couldn't cross the line. And that's a 16-1 shot, we figured, according to the Vegas money lines. That's not a high probability of success, but it's also not something that's impossible.
No, it's not impossible. It's just hard when you need. I almost feel better if it was like one game where you had like long odds of one team needing to win there than needing 3 results, I think. Because I do think Ohio State needs all 3, right? It's not some combination of 2 out of the 3. I don't think there's a path for Ohio State unless Alabama, Texas, and Florida State all lose. The thing that I guess makes that interesting, and we're not listening to Boo Corrigan talk on the ESPN as we record this because he's not going to say anything of interest or substance, but they do have stuff in the bylaws for the playoff about injured players, and I don't know if it did come down to a comparison for Florida State without its quarterback that could leave them in a not great spot. But I still think even if they end up winning, they're not going to leave out an undefeated conference champion. So Ohio State's only chance of getting in ahead of Florida State is if Florida State loses. So 16-1 when you say it out loud does sound a bit difficult for Ohio State, I think, to overcome. But when you look at all three games, right, I don't know. I think you can convince yourself of all of those results happening for the Buckeyes, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it gets longer once you add, as you said, you have to have all three results hit, and you can't have 2 out of 3. Like, that stretches it out. I think when I put it in and it was like just messing around, just putting in Texas to lose and Florida State to lose was around 10 or 11-1, and it kicked it way up with Georgia. Now, Georgia's a decided favorite in this game, in the SEC championship game. Alabama did not look very good at all in nearly losing, and I mean, in all honesty, should have lost to Auburn on Saturday. So, I mean, that strength that pushes it out. Like, I don't know. I almost I think that Oklahoma State beating Texas might be the most unlikely of the three.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't say that it's just like 3 coin flips, but I mean, Georgia is a heavy favorite. I feel like Louisville should beat Florida State the way that they've been playing, the way the Seminoles have looked without Jordan Travis and some of that ugliness that we saw in the Florida game offensively from them. But the Big 12 is also a little bit weird, and we've seen Quinn Ewers occasionally go into some games and struggle with turnovers and get out of sorts. Now, we've also seen highs and lows from Oklahoma State throughout the year, and who knows what version of them is actually going to show up. So it's hard to like feel great about those chances, but they're better than having 0 if you're Ohio State. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's right. People are going to have to wait till Saturday. All these games are on Saturday, and we're going to pick some of them later in the week too. We're going to do a pick show where we talk more about these games in depth and place some wagers on them like we've done all year. So we won't get too much into that here, but yeah, like you need Louisville to win. I think Louisville is a 2.5 point underdog, right? Like that's certainly not unheard of. I think Georgia will beat Alabama. I've been picking that all year on Kings of the North. I've had Georgia in my playoff ballot or playoff projection since we started doing them a couple weeks ago. And I think you can place a little bit of hope in the craziness we've seen out of the Big 12 and the Big 12 championship in particular. That game just gets really weird. Exciting finishes, upsets. I don't know what it is about that game. They played at Jerry World, right? In Arlington. So
Yep.
maybe it's something about that stadium that brings it out of those teams. But if you match those two teams up, like, of course you're going to think Texas is going to win. And I agree with you that seems like the unlikeliest result that Ohio State needs to happen. But I won't be shocked if that happens either. Nothing they're waiting for Ohio State is like just a bonkers proposition, which if you're an Ohio State fan who is holding out hope to make the playoff, and I hope that you are, because like I understand that the loss to Michigan stings, but if you have an opportunity to play for a national championship, you should relish it. I think there's reason to feel not confident, but at least hopeful. Like I don't think the dream is totally dead, even if you need a lot of help.
I haven't seen a ton of the same conversation that happened last year during this week, or at least in the first 48 hours after the loss in the game, where I was the first one on the field in the horseshoe saying that team should not be in the playoffs and like didn't deserve it. I'm not blaming or pointing fingers at anybody else. I was the first one that I know of to do that. And by the middle of the week, it was kind of like, okay, well, if they've earned the right from the playoff committee, yeah, you have to take it. Like you're not going to decline an invitation to the playoff. You should celebrate it. But I haven't felt, Bill, maybe you've seen it. I haven't a ton of it that Ohio State fans, maybe it's the experience of a year ago, or maybe it's just the fact that it was a 1-possession game on the road against a team that's now number 2 in the college football playoff rankings. Not a lot of people just throwing up their hands and being like, that's it. Give me the Orange Bowl. Forget the playoff. Don't even want to see these Buckeyes. I haven't seen a lot of that.
No, nor have I. Certainly not as much as last year. I felt like it was pretty prevalent last year, at least in the first few days after the Michigan loss. And I think it's a combination of a couple of things, right? What you mentioned, like the Ohio State fans have been through this before, and I think a lot of people who maybe had that feeling last year and then, were still got to see an exciting playoff game even when they thought they shouldn't be in it. I think that helps. I think it also helps that Ohio State has been largely very good for all year and also played better for longer stretches against Michigan than it did last year too. So there's flaws with this team, right? If they were to get onto the playoff stage, we'll dissect them and we'll talk about whether or not we think Ohio State can actually win a national championship. But I'm glad we don't hear that a lot this time around, and I think I understand the dynamics being a little different. What that makes that the case?
Yeah, I mean, who knows what that would look like? I mean, a month's rest, a month's recovery for these guys.
Hmm.
We saw Tommy Eichenberg being banged up. Kyle McCord's had the ankle. All those things. We can go through the list. It's probably not worth that conversation and getting people's hopes up that like, hey, they could go get a rematch with Georgia in New Orleans and win it. I mean, that's we got to go one step at a time when you've already given up the ability to control your fate and your destiny, which Ohio State did on Saturday. One thing that we didn't include the Pac-12 championship game in this conversation for a reason, right? Like the Pac-12 champ is going to get in no matter who it is. Washington is sitting there at 3, and Utah. That was last year.
It's last year.
Last year's
and
hopeful
the year
team.
before that, yeah.
And Oregon sitting there ahead of Ohio State at number 5. The Pac-12 is going to get a team in. It doesn't matter which one. I don't think that they'll get 2 because if Washington loses, their resume does not compare favorably with Ohio State.
No, it doesn't. And maybe if there are Ohio State fans who again are clinging to hope and believed what you just said prior to Tuesday night, and then saw Ohio State end up behind both of those teams, I wouldn't be worried about that. And I saw Stuart Mandel said like, oh, Ohio State's out. Like, I don't think that's true. We've seen the committee like pretty drastically move things around for the final rankings once all the results are in and they have all the data points. Ohio State's resume is unquestionably better than either a 1-loss Washington and certainly a 2-loss Oregon. So I don't have any fear of that if I'm Ohio State. I will watch that game because I think it's going to be the best conference championship game this weekend, but and that's on Friday night. But I don't think that has any bearing whatsoever on what happens to Ohio State. I just like Oregon's going to have 2 losses, and people will say like, "Well, they're not going to penalize a team for losing the conference championship." Like we just saw them do that last year to get Ohio State into the playoffs, so of course they would do that. And I just don't. I'm not fearful of losing in comparison to a 1-loss Washington. I guess it's a little different than USC. Like USC lost, and it was its second loss in the conference championship last year. Like it would be a different conversation, I guess, to penalize Washington for getting its first loss in a conference championship game. But I don't think this playoff committee would have much of a problem doing that if the trade-off is putting a brand like Ohio State's into the playoffs. So I'm with you. I don't think that game matters all that much.
Yeah, and I almost like can preview what they would say. Well, we remember the first game against Oregon. We thought Washington was really fortunate to survive that one. Like, we're going to wipe that one from the record books. And, they played to a stalemate, and now you have the Pac-12 champion. They're a tiebreaker. Like that's, they're going to justify it however they want. Like that's going to be fine. That's not a league that merits having 2 teams getting in. And I don't like to get into the conspiracy part of it, but the playoff selection committee does pride itself on putting together the most appealing matchups that it can. And I know that it always comes down to when Ohio State is in this position at the end of the year and they aren't undefeated or clearly or winning a Big Ten championship. So, it's just the power of the brand. Well, in some ways it is because this is a television product and they're making it up as they go every week to fit a justification. Do I think that they've done it to the detriment of the format? No, I have not, because Ohio State last year was a pretty prime example that was a team that was among the 4 best and capable of winning the national championship and was within one play of potentially competing for it and likely winning it. So that all plays into it. If you're Washington fans may be up in arms if that's the situation on Sunday, if they don't beat Oregon and they have to say, well, we played an extra game compared to Ohio State. Well, I mean, yes, that you did. That's tough. I'm sorry for you. But overall, your resume and the teams that you did beat are not going to stack up to who Ohio State did.
No, it won't. And I think you are correct in projecting what the talking points could be. Because I already think that there's some belief that Washington was outplayed the first time they played Oregon and was kind of just like fortunate enough to win that game. And then this game's a 9.5 point spread, I think, as we talk right now. Oregon's favored. Has a chance, I think, to get away from Washington with the way that Washington's played lately. So I think Ohio State would win a comparison to Washington regardless of the final score of that game. But certainly the chances will be helped if that game gets a little lopsided. And I do think that's on the table with how well Oregon's played and kind of how not not all that well Washington's played since those two teams met in the middle of October.
Yeah, apologies to Stuart Mandel for piling on to that take, but it was one of the first ones that we saw, and it just like if he had said they're done because I don't think there's any way that all three of these outcomes are going to happen, and be like, oh, okay, well,
Sure,
I can understand that.
Yeah.
But to just say they're at number 6, they're done. Well, that is not true or correct, and I don't know how you can jump to that conclusion. Since Saturday, like we didn't have to wait until Tuesday night and the committee putting the new rankings out to be like, well, these are the teams that Ohio State needs to lose. It's been obvious. And everyone has been saying, here are the scenarios since Saturday night. I don't know how that changed in his brain or other people's brains. Now, sorry. 6 is too low. You're not playing this week. You're out of here, bro.
It's just it's that typical West Coast bias that we see running rampant in college football. Those teams always getting the benefit of the doubt, and I'm sick of it.
Gosh, they sure are. You know what? The solution, the only solution, is to just acquire the West Coast.
That's right.
Merge it together. And that will be perfect for the Big Ten. I mean, it's all so silly. The Big Ten expansion and getting rid of the divisions, this is still an ideal time for that. Like Ohio State and Michigan should be playing again on Saturday. And if it was next year at this time, I mean, who knows how they would even sort it out when not everybody's playing each other. If Washington and Oregon remain this competitive and you add in the others and they don't all play each other, like that stuff's going to be a mess.
They're going to do what the Mountain West did and go to the BCS points to determine who plays in the Big Ten championship.
Bring the computers back.
Yeah.
Bring the computers back. We were talking about that on Saturday, and you were like, "Oh, that's cool." Like Boise State's out, right? No, they're not.
Nope.
The computers said they're going to play for the Mountain West championship.
Boise State is playing for the Mountain West championship, and UNLV, which lost last week to put itself into a tie, still gets to go over the team that beat it in San Jose State. It's a great system they have out there.
To go play the program that fired its coach a month ago.
It's awesome. I can't wait to have that in the Big Ten. It's going to be great.
What a sport we cover.
Right. I like that we've playoff expansion and this rapid change in college football has brought us back to a point where the BCS rankings are going to be relevant again. It's great.
I hope we all get a vote.
Yeah.
Everyone who covers college football just gets to put it in every single week, and then they feed it in because you got to get more data points. I have said that. You can't just have a jury of 12 sitting in a room in Grapevine, Texas, which how did they pick Grapevine, by the way? I don't know. Why is it necessary? Don't we all have Zoom now? Why do they have to fly down there every week? What are we doing?
Oh, to get the rewards points.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not even a Marriott property. What a waste.
The Gaylord Texan is on a Marriott property.
I don't believe so.
I think you're right. Yeah, I don't think it is either.
It's whatever Gaylord rewards are. I don't have any of them.
I don't have any of those either.
And I have visited there. It's lovely. Maybe they just like the Christmas lights.
Oh, that's probably it. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes them feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
That's right.
I don't know. But however they went down there, whatever they did, they decided Ohio State is number 6, and they are not eliminated from the college football playoff race. Yes, Bill.
I have an important update. It is a Marriott property.
What? Well, that's a game changer. I have plenty of those points. I'm glad
we go down there this weekend to watch the championship games with them.
I'm glad you were here to fact check that in real time for me. That's big. Because I don't know. We should just go experience it one random Tuesday night next year. And
have you ever been invited down there for that when they do the faux mock committee thing?
No, when I was at ESPN, they put out a call to arms, but I was like way down the pecking order. They don't need this Big Ten guy. No, send the whole SEC crew to figure it out. They're going to join Fox, CBS, and NBC in the future. Know it.
Yeah, they know. Yeah, it was prescient by the powers that be.
No, and I don't think it would help me because the way that they explain the process every single year and then week to week within it, they're making it all up as they go. So you could go in there and they just throw you a random, this is the way I envision it in my mind. You go into that boardroom, they give you the data. Here you go, sort it out 1 through 25. All 12 people are not going to agree on which of those numbers are the most important. And then they're going to cast a ballot. And then I'm not the first person to say this or the last. Like, then you send some guy named Boo up front to be like, hey, try and explain this to the ravenous reporters who all cover one team and want to be able to then go explain it to their fans. And like, well, this explanation is directly contradicted for the other team over here.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, well.
They should just, if they televise the discussion, I'd watch that. I think that would be much more compelling television than what we get on ESPN. And then one guy trying to speak for 12 people.
What if they actually do it like AP voters? Like, they spend 15 minutes looking at the box score and then they're just done.
Some guy driving in his car from Lubbock back to Oklahoma City at 3:00 in the morning trying to figure out if Fresno State won their game. Filling out his ballot.
Now they probably like hand them the scores because they wait till Monday. It's like, did you miss that? Did you see what happened in the Mountain West? We've got to figure out who their champion is. So, break down that game from Wyoming and UNLV for us real quick. But like, do all these people, how deep are they really going? Like, it's insane in many ways that this is what we've given over the sport to. Now it'll be reclaimed a bit, I think, when you open it up to 12, but why are we supposed to trust these 12 people? I don't trust them.
I don't trust anybody.
They let Gary Barta do this.
I know. And then he had to stop because he was bad at it.
At everything. He was bad at everything.
Yeah, he's good at nepotism.
Well, he learned it from the best. Anyway, as I was saying, before we got sidetracked and then corrected that you can go stay at the Gaylord Texan on Marriott Bonvoy Rewards, Ohio State is number 6. They need 3 things to happen on Championship Saturday. They need Louisville. They need Oklahoma State. And they need Georgia to win. Bill and I have calculated that using our expert formula that we slaved over, not at any hotel property, just in our offices, 16-1. That's Ohio State's chances of getting back in the college football playoff. Thanks for joining us on the podcast daily. Have a great Wednesday. He's Bill. I'm Austin. See ya.